it's like dawning on me, like the older I get, like that's just you know, it's something I don't want to say, because I don't want to legitimately believe that, but it's just like the more and more I proceed along in this world, I see that there's very few people who actually make a difference in any given situation. And then you have all this filler. It's sort of like the Pareto principle, where it's like you got all these businesses, all these companies, only 20% of the employees are doing the actual work, or the majority of the work. The rest, the 80% of employees, shit, they're just like filler, you know? Just filler, and you don't know why they're there, but it's just like they're there just to be a body, you know? And I think the problem is they constitute the majority of people, and so when the majority has what the majority's strongest part is, you know, being the majority. That's the strongest thing about it. And so that's how things get unbridled and completely, you know, perverted by society. You know, that's why there's a lot of hypocrisy and, you know, a lot of things that just don't make sense anymore, or ever did, is because the majority is predominantly made up of people who are, they're not stupid, but they are cultured in a way, cultured or conditioned to think and believe in what they deem, usually in what they deem as something, you know, it's a standard set by somebody else, you know, someone above them, you know, whoever they look up to for guidance. And usually that person's not very smart themselves, and that's the problem. But what they do know how to do is manipulate people. What they do know how to do is get their way. A lot of like the bosses and leaders in this world, you will see that they're either very stupid or very psychotic. And being a psychopath is perfect if you're a leader, because that means you can do things that most normal empathetic people would have problems doing. And that's typically why psychopaths are leaders, is because they're willing to do, you know, the firings, they're willing to do the bombings of other countries, they're willing to throw people in jail and lock away the key, because in many elements these things do have to be done. But unfortunately, it's sort of like how Saul Alinsky says it, is with life, you know, to deny corruption is to deny life, you know. And Saul Alinsky was someone who was fighting for the rights of minorities. He was an activist, but at the same time he recognized the only thing to get things done, and the only thing to help the majority of, you know, these minorities was, yes, there's going to have to be some corruption involved. He understood that there's no way around it, and he said to deny corruption is to deny life. And understandably, yes, he was not a fan of communism, as far as I understand. He was left-leaning, but he was staunchly against communism, from what I understand. So, like, when people hear this, it's like, don't think that Saul Alinsky was like some screaming psychotic liberal. No, the left definitely takes talking points from him. Rules for Radicals, I've read about shit like 50% of the book. I still have to finish it. I read so many books, but it's a good book. I heavily recommend it. But he saw that, you know, and it's like, you know, like, I hate bringing up the border crisis, but like, if you expect to fix something, you also have to realize that, yes, there's going to be corruption involved in it. Yes, it's unfortunately, you don't want to make comparisons to any leaders speaking about omelets in any sense of the word ever in your fucking life, and look at it as a principle to moral ethics, because it isn't. But in a pragmatic sense, we're talking realistically. That's the scary reality to things, and that's what a lot of people, well, this is why psychopaths excel at these things is because they understand that they have to do these things, because most normal, compassionate, empathetic people can't fall into those realms of corruption and do those things. And so, like, it's the same with all the humanitarian things that the left would say that they want to do. They have to realize, to achieve what they want to achieve, there has to be corruption somewhere involved in there, and it could be high amounts of corruption, or it could be very low amounts of corruption. It's just that there's rules to this world that, or you could say there's properties that the gods favor. The gods do not favor the man who tries to live pure and sinless. The gods certainly do not. The gods favor the person who is willing to put the blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice into it. And if that means putting himself into jeopardy and putting possibly others into jeopardy, the gods just like, hey, that's gonna keep your car running during the winter. All right, that's gonna that's gonna get old Sparky out of the shed and into the fucking street. That's how the gods feel about things, and it's just an unfortunate and inconvenient truth to the world we live in. It is an unfortunate and inconvenient truth to humanity, but it also makes you kind of lose hope a little bit, you know, because then you begin to see that, yes, a lot of the people who are incompetent a lot of the time are the people who are running things. So if you want to take that into account, you have to see that that is corruption in its purest form. Now, when I speak of corruption being necessary, I don't mean you become completely 110% corrupt. You're going to exhibit about 5 to 10%, maybe 15 to 20% corruption. But when you have these insane people and people who have no intellect, or who are not very smart at all, running things, I think that is corruption in its purest form. There's no good to it at all, is what I'm saying. And yes, these people could be benign and not have any really bad intentions or anything, but you also have to stop at one point of the day and be like, well, is just being really stupid a form of evil? Well, I'm gonna say yes. If you're doing things that are unconsciously evil, I'm sorry, but I will say yes, that's evil, because it is evil to be ignorant in my eyes. You know, to be ignorant of the things you do could possibly be the most absolute form of evil, because then that evil is justified because, oh, I didn't know any better. So, you know, you have a lot of these people running things, ruling the world. These are the people that you have come to rely on because the masses rely on them, because the masses are always going to think they're fucking intelligent. They're always going to think they're smart. They're always going to think they're the brightest people in the room. And it's not because the masses are stupid. I used to think that. Some of them are. But I think, you know, and it is a bit of a, what, you know, a man with a silly mustache once said about useful dumbasses, or whatever he said, you know, dummies that are, you know, that I could put in position A and position B and get them to do stupid stuff for me. Where was I going? But, like, people, I used to think, is that the masses are really stupid. A good chunk of them is. I'm not saying half of them, maybe 25%. But what the masses really are cultured. You know? They're cultured. They're cultivated in a certain way by the leaders, by the people who are tossing their money around to these news organizations, even the churches, things like that. Anywhere you go where there's, you know, a paper trail or money flowing or anything like that, anywhere you go, and there's money involved and there's, you know, powerful people involved, they are the ones who are culturing these people and these useful idiots as well. They're the ones who are culturing, conditioning the masses. And it's not a conspiracy. It's not. It's not a conspiracy. It's simple. It is the people with the most money. That it's not this underground cult or organization or oligarch. It's just as we know, it's the richest people who have the ability and the power to do this. They have the money, the influence, the power, and they can hide things so easily. You know, it's so easy to hide things when you have money. You know, especially when you're billionaires. It's so easy to hide things, and half the time you don't even have to hide things, because look at this age we're living in. Is if you pull any evidence up towards anything, and you got a crowd of 10,000 people arguing with you on Twitter, and you're posting the facts. You're posting screenshots. You're posting the papers from the underground laboratory that you stole the documents from. You know, you got pictures of the frogs and the frog people in the capsules that are being, you know, spliced with human DNA. Like Alex Jones was saying, you got all this evidence. You know, and next you have this reporter who comes on your show and tells you everything. As a matter of fact, you fly out to each and every individual of these 10,000 people. You fly out to their houses with a sample of this frog person. You show it to them. You pull it out of the tube. The frog starts dancing like, hello, my darling. Hello, my baby. Hello. You know, they're still not convinced. You can do this to every single fucking person on the planet, and they still will not believe you. Is what I'm fucking saying. So the facts and the evidence do not matter. They don't. And that's what I've been trying to say for probably about the past year now, is it's emotions. It's emotions. Emotions. It's what gets people going. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what schematic you pulled out of your asshole or your vagina. It doesn't matter. Your pee hole, your dick hole, your mouth. It's how you make people feel. If you can go in front of a podium or an audience of people and just say the dumbest, most dog shit fucking thing ever, but you get their blood pumping and they're like, you know what, yeah, you know, you can get them to fucking tear a city down. It doesn't matter what you say. It's how you get them to feel. It's about being charismatic. It's about, you know, using all the tools of the trade in the ways that you make somebody think that you are correct and that you, yourself, and the people around you are being abused. Your enemies are the ones who are doing the abusing. And the only way that we can do anything about it is to burn all these buildings down. You know, if you can do that, which I can't. I'm not that sort of charismatic leader. I can't do that. I can't convince. There's plenty of people out there who can, though. I will give them none of my attention. But it kind of lines up to with my feelings about science and, you know, maybe metaphysical, mythological. Like, it's just like it just lines up to a point where I'm just like, you know, a lot of these things, like it doesn't, like the science does not really matter. Like, again, I can use the sun as an example. It's like, yes, okay, the sun really what's keeping us nice and hot, you know? And I'm just like, well, isn't it the greenhouse gases? You know, I mean, so like what difference does it really fucking make at the end of the day if the sun is creating the heat but the gases are trapping it? It's just like, can't we just, you know, if we just painted it with some metaphysical or metaphorical analogy, it would make just as much sense to us as saying like, yeah, well, the sun is composed of X, Y, and Z. And this is why this is happening. You know, like, it's the same when they say, like, in the Bible that God rained sulfur down onto the earth. Well, you know, it could have just been a falling meteorites or a comet or something like that. It could have been a fucking asteroid. What difference does it make? It happened. Is kind of what I'm saying. It's just like whether God threw it down there or outer space did. Like, what difference does it make? All we know is that the city was destroyed by burning, hurling rocks of sulfur or something, and it's no longer there. You know, like that's all we know. And some people could be like, well, we incurred the wrath of God. Sure. You know, or some people be like, they pull out their news board and like, well, you know, according to the, you know, the heliocentric system of our universe and blah, 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 you know, it's like, what does it fucking matter? Is what I'm saying. What is the fucking difference? What is it? You know, and that's why I'm just like, you jerk me off some more of this science bullshit. You know, it doesn't stop the meteorite from fucking landing. It doesn't stop the asteroid from demolishing a fucking city. No, it doesn't. You know what stops demolishing cities? Nothing. You know, these asteroids are just gonna fall. There's, if you can traject the fucking planet onto, you know, and even if you did that, like if you put like these enormous rockets on planet Earth, you know, like they stuck them to like the side of the United States or something. It's these towers of rockets that extended out into outer space. And so, like, as soon as a meteorite comes along, you flip those rockets on, the Earth just like just propels out of the way, and then the asteroid misses it. But now you've just thrown the Earth off the fucking it's you know, orbit with the sun, and now you're totally fucked. And the moon's like all the way over there. And you know, so like it's just like, what do you fucking do in that situation? It's like, well, it's like, I don't know, if a fucking asteroid hits us, it hits us, and that can be, hey, that could be an act of God, or it could just be this funny, uh, sort of contradicting universe we live in, and that's something. Um, Jesus Christ, get the fuck out of there.